The Jays combined for 68 points. Al Horford, perfect from the field, and just generally a well-balanced performance from the Celtics. It's all too much for the Dallas Mavericks, but how does this impact the MVP conversation? Plus, a Celtics role player luxury draft because we're big nerds. All of that next on First to the Floor.
Who is going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually is.
Brown drives, layup on the glass.
That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice the body.
Garnett, knocked away.
Hey, welcome into another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. The Celtics disposed of the Dallas Mavericks 125-112, led by the best duo in the league, Tatum and Brown. Joining me to talk all about it, Jake Eisenberg. Jake, how you doing, man?
Mate, I'm good. It's Friday morning. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in America. But yeah, riding high off an incredible statement win for the Celtics. They inspired me to get a big dub in men's league last night.
Nice.
Win streak 2 in a row. Best defense in the league on Thursday nights in D4. Yeah, man. Feeling good. How are you, mate?
Hell yeah, I'm good. That's great. Great to hear that there's real life, tangible benefits of the Celtics playing
Yes.
as well as they are. That's great. And like you mentioned, it was a statement win for the Celtics. I'm doing well. I was down in Melbourne yesterday. Stayed up quite late with some mates watching the World Cup and playing some NBA 2K. So a little dusty today, but we're going to make the best of it. Jake, a statement win, as you said. The Celtics win 125-112. How did the, quote, find a way to win Celtics find a way to win this one against Luka and the Mavs?
Man, I love this game. Coming into it, I was like, you kind of talk yourself into it not mattering at all. Look, if we lose this game, regular season doesn't matter, just one game. But I had like proper like playoff nerves before this one. Luka coming to town, MVP on MVP, statement win. They're kind of racking them up now between Denver, Memphis, Atlanta, all these little pretenders, Philly. I'm going to ignore the Cavs games because we're a Karis LeVert 41 points and an and one call being made on Jayson Tatum's dunk from winning those as well. But man, they had a playoff game plan to this one as well. It was, we're going to kind of play Luka one-on-one. We're going to switch everything, including Hauser, including Horford. Going to let him go off and limit the assists. And they did that until late in the third. He only had one assist up until that scary comeback where I know every Celtics fan, their esophagus and sphincters started to tighten up just a little bit.
I wasn't ruling that out until like 3 minutes to go in the game.
No,
right?
we're way too scarred at this point. It's going to take us a while to get over that, I think. But yeah, and then the assists started to come, and that's when they started to get back in it, when the ball got moving and the other players started to get involved. But that was it. It was like playoff intensity, playoff atmosphere, and kind of a playoff game plan as well. You don't really see that too often in the regular season with such a focused effort on a game plan throughout an entire game.
Yeah, clearly a game marked on the calendar for all involved. Nationally televised game. Two potential MVP candidates, or two literal MVP candidates going head-to-head, and two teams that have had very close, near traumatizing for us Celtics fans games in the past. So I think it was very much marked on the calendar for all involved. And then just from a comeback perspective from the Celtics as well, Marcus Smart was quoted after the game as saying that the Celtics lollygagged in the Bulls game. You can talk to me, Jake, about some of the notable differences, even right out of the gate, between the Bulls game and this Mavs game.
It's so different, man. The intensity, the stat I think that sums it up is in the Mavs game, they were 5 for 9 from 3 in the first quarter. And in the Bulls game, they were 5 for 17 in the first quarter. They were making a concerted effort to get to the rim, move the ball, get downhill. Still took it, 9 threes is a pretty normal amount of threes, not too little, not too much. That was the biggest difference. Everybody was getting downhill, putting their stamp there. They're setting the tone early. That was the biggest difference to me early. And then the defense on the other end, while Luka was going off, you could tell everybody was locked in. Jaylen especially, I thought, really came in locked in on both ends.
Yeah, well, one of the first trips down the court in transition, and Marcus Smart, who was fantastic in this game, we'll get to in more detail in a little bit, Jaylen runs the floor, backdoor cut, Smart hits him with the bounce pass straight to the rim, and that was one of like 1,000 trips to the rim for Jaylen Brown in this particular game. You talked about sort of the playoff game planning, and we talked about it from a defensive perspective as to what the Celtics were throwing at Luka Doncic. But on the other end, and I think after a game recently, Jayson Tatum was quoted as saying, like, offensively, not a lot of play calling and things like that, but a lot of randomness, a lot of moving the ball, a lot of off-ball movement. And we saw that right out of the gate in this game. And with the Bulls game, it was the antithesis of that description. We saw none of that, and it was a sort of game where you could sort of tell, okay, I don't think the Celtics have it in this particular game, and sure enough, they lost it. Total opposite against the Mavs here, right out of the gate. Ball is zipping around, players are moving off ball, there's multiple off-ball actions occurring simultaneously, which saw the Celtics get to the hoop, obviously many times throughout the game. The pace of this game, I think if you could put the offensive game plan down to one thing, was just get that ball off the glass and run down the floor as quickly as you can, everyone. And that seemed to put a very unathletic Luka Doncic and team in the fritz, basically, from the get-go.
Yeah, I loved that quote from Tatum, the randomness, the cutting. Man, I've been comparing the Jays and the Celtics to the Warriors for a while now. We have probably the most continuity in the league outside of the Warriors at this point. I know the Bucks are kind of up there because Giannis has been there for a while, but Drew's relatively recent. Middleton's been there for a while, but they've had turnovers around the edges. But Horford, Marcus, Jaylen, Jayson, these guys have been there for so long now, and especially we're going to get to Marcus, but their roles now 2 years in a row have been far more solidified, and they're getting more comfortable with the read and react, the ball movement, as you said. You can really tell the continuity. I think is one of the most underrated things in the NBA. With so much player movement, player empowerment era, it's something that you lose, and something that I've always believed in for the Celtics to try and keep these guys together is that it has a massive impact on the regular season, trusting each other when it comes to the playoffs, and to see them kind of respond the way they did, I think is a testament to staying together. Mazzulla said, you're not going to play perfect every night. It's how you're going to respond the next time. And I think on the podcast last episode, we talked about, they've barely lost 2 games in a row going back to second half of last year. The only games that you can really point out are the 3 in a row they lost to the Warriors in the finals. Outside of that, it's been emphatic responses. In the playoffs, every time they lost, they came out and it was like a dominating performance. And today was absolutely no different. Yesterday.
Yeah, it was really the Celtics just coming out and playing the hits, like all those greatest hits that we've come to know and love over the years, and they just put the ball on one sexy album that we all just sit around the campfire. Is that how you listen to albums? I don't know.
That's right.
It's been a while since I've listened to albums from anybody, clearly. And enjoy these tunes played by one of the greatest bands of all time, the Boston Celtics. So it's good to see them all put that on one LP at once for our listening pleasure.
Oh man, that's such a good point, man. Yeah, this is Californication. This is like some of the best albums out there. You had it all.
The pet sounds of NBA games, I believe. We will get to Jayson Tatum. I want to save that for sort of the MVP conversation and how this game impacted that conversation. So let's start with some of the supporting cast. Marcus Smart, the floor general. A point that I had coming out of this game, and we'll get to sort of the specifics, but just how good it is to not have a score-first point guard, and that how well that supplements the Jays and what they need to do to be impactful players. Prior to Marcus Smart as our floor general, it was Kyrie Irving and Isaiah Thomas and Kemba Walker. Clearly, that detracted from the Jays' potential offensively. And now, Marcus Smart with his 9 assists. We talked about the Jaylen Brown backdoor cut early in the game. He also had another one of those incredibly sexy drop bounce passes where he's sort of semi-posting up in the key. The 3-second call is looming. Jake's running the clip here for all of our YouTube viewers. And there's that beautiful cut by Jayson Tatum finishing with the reverse. And that is just beautiful basketball. That is, I don't know. How would you describe that, Jake?
I love it. It is the microcosm of everything that's happening with the Celtics. And the way that they talk about it in the postgame, you can just tell how much of a focus it is and how bought in they are to the process of the ball movement. Brogdon kicking it to Horford, and Tatum instantly cuts. He doesn't get the pass straight away, but because he's cutting, and Smart in the postgame is I had my eye on JT the whole time. And sometimes I'm do I believe you? But then I go watch the clip and it's like, you had to have been keeping your eye on him because he literally it's a touch pass, around the corner for an easy layup. Smart says, I would have been pissed if he didn't make that cut, or Tatum said Smart would have been pissed if I didn't make that cut. And the fact that they're all on the same page with this stuff, like, we got to get the stats on it, but like the amount of cuts, like points Tatum is scoring off cuts, even specifically off Smart, like the numbers are just going up every single week. To see Smart, to your point, like, no, we don't have Kemba, now we don't have Kyrie. He's kind of relatively new to the point guard role in his way. Like, this is the second year that he's had this role, and especially since he's kind of gotten a little more healthier. I guess the ankle thing, but he had that string of averaging 10 plus assists and 1 turnover, and today was a continuation of that. He is the point guard of the Celtics team, and like, he's doing a hell of a job at it.
Yeah, well, shout out to people watching the YouTube live stream of the show. ZGamer200 writes in the chat, in Smart's first 8 games of the season, he had 8+ assists once. In the last 8 games, he's had at least 8+ assists in 7 of those 8 games. I think maybe the outlier being the first game back where, ankle, which is an ongoing issue, but the ankle was particularly dodgy in that performance. In terms of what else made this game so exciting, they were locked in offensively and just 11 turnovers. And the Mavs, they're ranked 4th in steals in the league, Jake. And yet we managed to really keep those turnovers low. I think the Jays had 2 each. And just generally, I don't know, like I don't want to hamper on too much about how locked in offensively they were, but that was really the tale, along with that sort of playoff game planning defense on Luka Doncic. Everyone on the court at all times were so cohesive and so much moving as one single unit. It was just a beautiful sight to behold. I don't know, anything to add to that, Jake?
Man, when you see these guys playing like that, though, it's hard to not just get filled with good feelings and goosebumps. Like, I got home after basketball and I'm watching the highlights. Like, this is one of those games. Like, this is, I think, one of the games of the season. Going into Thanksgiving, everybody's watching. National, you had the Mike Breen element of it to a lot of the calls. Like, when you see them playing like this, all on the same page, you have grandiose visions of where we can go. Because when they're playing like this, no one can stop them, no one can guard them. Man, I mean, you can't really ask for much more from a Celtics fan porn perspective. Can't last that.
Definitely. And you mentioned, like, watching the highlights. I have found, and maybe this is just a personal thing for me, that, while we've been winning all of these games, not too many of them have been highlight binge worthy. Maybe I've just set my own personal standard bar to be very high. But as we were getting to the later stages of that 9-game winning streak, we've talked about it before. Yeah. They were ugly wins. And they weren't like, let's sit down and look back and just drool over, how well this team put it together to get these wins. They were really ugly and like kind of like, I'm glad that's over so I can move on to the next one. This was one of those games where you can really sit down and just like take a bite out of the meat of this game and really just enjoy yourself there. So I'll be doing that again once we finish this podcast.
Yeah, this is going to be top of the list for the best Celtics moments kind of video that Ben made last year, which if you haven't seen is just, man, with your day off, you're going to be full Thanksgiving, turkey, everything, just rip into that.
Check it out.
This is one of those moments for sure.
What else in this game stood out to you? We've got obviously a few other individual performances that we can get to, Jake. Malcolm Brogdon, I thought, as he's sort of starting to ramp himself back up again, I thought this was maybe his best game in his return, particularly late in the game where things were wavering a little bit for the Celtics. Malcolm Brogdon came in and just kind of righted the ship, which is something that we're all sort of growing to or becoming to appreciate with Malcolm Brogdon.
It was really good to see him get back on track here because I think he didn't look quite like himself since coming back from the hamstring injury. Even the Bulls game, like he had 23 points. I would almost argue that this game was better for him, more under control. He getting to the rim and finishing. He looked a little more comfortable. He felt like he was trusting his body more. And he had some really clutch moments, like when the Mavs were making that run and the collective Celtics Nation sphincter had tightened. He had an and one to push the lead back up to 16 with a minute or so to go in the third quarter. And I think the Mavs did score off the back of that, but it was like end of a scoring drought. It's like, okay, we can still go what we want. We can still get to the rim. We can still take it to these guys without too much resistance. It was just a very settling moment, and I think that that's something that he's done for us a lot this season, and to see him kind of find that role, find that comfort again, was very comforting to me personally, because the sweats were kind of creeping in, and to have good old Malcolm just settle things down for us felt really good.
Yeah, I was watching that game, the fourth quarter at least, in the bar of Melbourne Airport, and I think maybe based on how I was feeling, people were starting to sort of side eye me, being like, What's up with this guy? He's looking a little dicey over here. And then Malcolm Brogdon came in with that sort of calming influence and settled me down, and probably all the other patrons of that bar as well. Al Horford, 5 for 5 shooting. Went to him early as well. Nice showing of confidence from Joe Mazzulla to run something for Horford early in the game. Any notable takeaways there from Horford's performance?
I mean, the big thing is in the post game, Corrales asked him, set the first play of the game with you after an 0-9 night, and Al just goes, "Shooters shoot, man."
Hell yeah, Al.
Shooters shoot, man. And man, that's kind of what he is now. Like, more than half of his shots are coming from the 3-point line, and he's having a career best from the 3-point line. This whole team is kind of having a career best from the 3-point line outside of the two best players. He's just solid again. I mean, everybody got cooked by Luka here and there, but he's been as steady as you could ask for from Al. We're asking too much of Al at this point, but he's bringing it every single night, offensively contributing to the best offense in the league. I'm excited to get Rob back to kind of settle those minutes down a little bit, but yet defensively in the right spots, getting on the boards, just moving the ball. Love it. 4 from 4 from 3. He had that clutch 3 as well. The one that in the corner kind of late, they'd cut it to 10, and he had the one that rattled out. The shooter's touch.
Shooter's touch. That's
shooter's
right.
touch.
You love
that's
to see
out.
it. Just such a spicy bounce back there after an unfortunately terrible game against the Bulls there for Horford, and I guess knowing this, you could say this for everyone on the team, but knowing that the Thanksgiving break, even if it is only one day, was coming up for them, they could all go a little bit harder in the paint, so to speak. We certainly saw that with Al Horford, and then again for Horford, knowing that Time Lord, his return is imminent. Perhaps that sort of relief rather on the horizon for Al Horford, knowing that that's coming up. He knows that he can push it a little bit harder now and he'll be able to get some of that rest and recuperation later on in the season. Let's move on to the meat of this podcast. How does this game, Jake, affect the Tatum versus Luka MVP conversation?
Man, this game, this was for me kind of surreal to see, the national televised game, MVP on MVP candidate. We've been following this team so closely for so long, and especially for me personally, I kind of really start getting deep into it kind of in the IT era, and so it's just been ramping up every year, and so that kind of coincided with the Jays coming on board, and to be so close to their development and to have so much hope and praying to the basketball gods so consistently that Tatum can get to this level, and to see him finally get here is kind of surreal, because there's absolutely no question that Jayson Tatum is one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the NBA this season. And to see him finally get here was kind of had to take a step back and be like, wow. And so, as far as the MVP race goes, to see him kind of go against Luka 1v1, hunting him on one end, and then on the other end, Luka's trying to switch off Tatum as much as he could. Tatum is one of our best defenders and has been one of our best defenders in the league. And Luka didn't want any of that smoke. He was switching off Tatum, and on the other end to see that visual of Tatum come over here, I'm getting to the rim anytime I want. So, if you want to win the MVP, it can't hurt to take his lunch money down the stretch.
Definitely. Yeah, an iconic play, which we'll show the clip for a little bit later, mostly because I just don't have my mouse over the button for that right now. Yeah. But an iconic play, and Mike Breen really supplementing that with the call on that one. I was trying to dig up some stats that would be favorable for Jayson Tatum leading into this conversation. So my takeaway from that is that it's really a feel versus stats, like an eye test versus stats argument, because Luka just crushes it in all of the stats, and he's even really not that far behind in the majority of the defensive stats either. I think Tatum, the one notable, advanced metric from cleaning the glass, he is in the 94th percentile of block percentage league-wide. That's not specific to his position at all, league-wide, which is incredible, and I think, obviously signifies just how impactful he's been on both ends of the floor. But for everything else, usage, on-off numbers, points per possession, points per play, etc., Luka is just crushing all of those. But I think that really just speaks more to, obviously the role that Luka plays on the Mavs versus the luxury of all of Jayson Tatum's teammates that he has all around him, and the fact that he can take his foot off the gas. And, for better or worse, we have seen that multiple times already this season. But in terms of feel and watching this game, like, Tatum was clearly the more impactful player. Am I wrong? Because again, you look at the box score, clearly Luka had more of an impact, but Tatum appeared to be much better.
Yeah, I thought it was relatively obvious. It's the two-way thing, like the offensive gap. I think it's okay, and I'm sorry if this is blasphemy to any Celtics fans, but I think it's okay to admit that offensively Luka does have the edge on Tatum. I just don't think the gap is that large. It's something we're not going to be able to answer because we don't know what Tatum would look like in a 39% usage situation where he's just dominating the ball. Like, his stats would be inflated. Tatum's assist numbers are kind of deflated just by the everybody eats ball movement, read and react system that the Celtics have going here. Like, he's just not the point guard like Marcus is. But the gap defensively is just, it's astronomical. Like, the fact, like, Tatum is an all defense level defender, whereas Luka gets hunted on the other end. And you can see it in a game like this where every bucket feels really important. And to be a guy that's kind of giving up, like, Jaylen was just cooking him, Tatum was cooking him. And even on that one of the Tatum highlight play where he goes between the legs, spin move, Smitty to the rim, Luka's like the closest help defender and doesn't do anything. Like, Tatum's one of his best skills is his help defense. And that's kind of why I think his defense has been underrated, because the average fan isn't as locked in on his nail defense and his help defense, but he's so good at it. And if you were to switch roles in that kind of spot, like, Tatum was really close to Luka there, and Tatum's getting a hand in there, making you uncomfortable, whereas Tatum barely even noticed that he was there. So the gap is just so large on the defensive end that I think that especially this year that I give the edge to Tatum as the better player right now.
Totally. And I want to give a shout out to Sam Hauser as well. Speaking of MVP candidates.
Yes.
He got switched onto Luka Doncic a number of times, who had him posted up down low. Obviously, Luka scored on him a few times, but I feel like it was probably an even battle, but it feels crazy to say, between those two in that particular format. Hauser, just enough size, just enough quick-footedness, which again feels crazy to say, to stop Luka around 50% of the time. I haven't got the tracking data, but it felt like it was relatively successful defending Luka Doncic in the post one-on-one. So worthy of a shout-out.
Man, it's one of the funniest storylines of the whole year so far has been opposing players saying, "Oh, I got the white shooter on me. I'm going to go at him," and completely getting them out of the flow of their offense. Luka is Luka. Like, he was hitting the same shots over Hauser that he was hitting over Marcus Smart. There was one play, I think, Hauser played really good defense on him, and Marcus was on the bench, and Luka's pivot, fadeaway, splash, and Marcus just shakes his head like, great defense, man. Like, that, you don't care who's in front of you. Luka's probably making that shot. Really impressive by Hauser. And Hauser, he was only 1 for 3 from 3, but he's just a smart player. He's doing a little bit of everything. I have like one little clip here, really, really simple. Just, you'd think that they'd be kind of looking for Hauser to get the 3, but Hauser sets the screen, gets Brogdon a wide open 3, splash. He just, he's not just a shooter. He's setting screens to get other guys open. He's defending in space. He's getting on the defensive boards. The fact that he's kind of doing a little bit of everything and becoming like this guy's, or has become this guy's, constantly surprising.
high basketball IQ, and we gotta call it Brad Stevens.
Man.
He saw it all before everybody. He saw it all. He knew what he was doing. He knew he was getting a 6'9" Duncan Robertson with elevated intelligence, and it's all bearing out on the court for Sam Hauser. It's good to see. I'm going to run the play now, Jake. You all know what it is, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit more.
Doncic sees an opening, goes inside. Blocked by Tatum. Jaylen Brown for three. Bang!
Bang! Where does this rank in like all-time Tatum Brown sequences?
Blocked by Tatum. Oh, it's so great that we got the Mike Breen on this one.
Yes, and Gorman did a great job as well. Like I saw the Celtics replay as well. He was
I haven't seen the Gorman one. I was thinking, I'm sure Gorman actually nailed it as well.
He did.
Where does it rank, man? It's the moment of the season for me, at least so far. Yeah.
Let us know in the chat as well. We are live streaming this pod. Let us know where you think this ranks among other Jays sequences all time.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. For some whatever reason, this one popped in my head. The Hornets game, like 6 games into last season, there was just like Tatum threw it to Jaylen, and we just yammed it on Miles Bridges.
Yeah, added significance now with that play as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really dunked him out of the league. Hard to. Maybe that's a whole pod there. We just got to get all the J to J crimes that have been committed on the rest of the league. But another 30-point performance by both players, bringing them, I think, to 16. If you follow Sean Grandy, he's so good at kind of these stats and stuff. 16, and they're still like 16 or so games behind Shaq, Kobe, and Durant and Westbrook. But they're gonna get up there. They're gonna get closer and closer, and it's so awesome that like they're kind of in that rarefied air.
Yeah, Justin in the chat says there's a handful of playoff moments last year, but this year it's probably the best, which is absolutely fair. I recall, and because I'm particularly prone to focusing on games against the Denver Nuggets, if you've been listening to this pod for a while, you understand why. There was I think a great transition play against the Nuggets in the 2021 season where it was Tatum Brown, like behind the back pass to Brown, who slams on, I can't remember who, but it was the Richard Jefferson, like, get that baby out of the street.
Yes.
Which was awesome. So, yeah, suffice to say, there's enough sample size now, enough data that we should get together, maybe in the All-Star break, Jake, and run through some spicy video footage. Any negative takeaways from this game? Obviously, it was a little bit dicey there, like we mentioned in the fourth quarter when Luka notched, I think, 8 assists in, like, half a quarter. Are there any moments or negative takeaways from this game that you think the Celtics can build on?
Yeah, it does add to the trend of them struggling to just kind of put it away this season. It's tough. They just went up so big, and it was so obvious that they had no chance of losing the game. That the reality is it's just human nature, and you can say you should put your foot on the throat, finish the game, etc. It's just, and it's the nature of the NBA. Like, if you watch the NBA, not just the Celtics, like 20-point leads get whittled down to 7, 8, 9 every single night. Teams are just so good on offense, and especially this year, the offense is kind of out of control. I think part of that has to do with the take foul thing. Like, the pace is up. Teams are just scoring faster. On that night where the Celtics almost blew that lead to the Grizzlies, similar to this, wasn't as big of a lead, but like that same night, the Cavs blew a 14-point lead to the Clippers. The Mavs almost blew a lead to the Nets if Durant doesn't miss that free throw. Like, it kind of just happens. And maybe it's a broader point for the league. Like, once you start playing bleeding the clock basketball, it kind of gives teams this desperation and the confidence, we've got nothing to lose kind of mentality. And because it does feel like it doesn't work. Like, all over the NBA, it ends up like getting stressful for what feels like no reason.
Yeah, and just, another takeaway from all of that is that we weren't able to rest the starters. And one of the bigger critical points of Missoula and the Celtics to this point in the season has been that just the crazy minute load on all starters, particularly Al Horford and probably Jayson Tatum as well. And it would just pay dividends, clearly, to be able to hold that lead to the point where we could rest our guys for even half a quarter. But unfortunately, it wasn't the case. The only other negative takeaway I've got, and this is not news by any stretch, but Joe Mazzulla being a timeout cheapskate in that This was the first time I found myself sort of like physically bothered by the lack of time because you're dealing with Luka Doncic. You know, it's not DeMar DeRozan, it's not the Bulls. This is Luka, who probably is going to end his career as an all-time player. Gets it to within single digits. This is maybe the Celtics killer in small sample size matchup-wise over the last few years. Just call a timeout, Joe. Let's talk it over. Give us fans at home a rest as well. And I found myself really bothered in this specific case that he wasn't calling a timeout. But hey, they got the win, so I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
I mean, yeah, I felt the same. Like I was like, call a timeout, but at the same time, he's just not going to do it. He loves it too much. He just, and honestly, I think it's the right personally. I think it's the right process. Like I forget which game it was now, but it was like 5-3, maybe even been the Bulls game, and it didn't help at all. Like I think the timeout thing, because we're more smooth-brained basketball analysts relative to NBA coaches. The timeouts don't help a lot of the time. Like you call a timeout and the team that's just better and on a run just continues to be better and on a run, even though it kind of feels better in the moment. What game was I watching on League Pass the other day? Oh, it was the Nets Sixers game. Just a cheeky Schadenfreude side tangent here, but man, the Nets losing to the Nets losing to a Sixers team without Harden, Maxey, and Embiid was chef's kiss. Yes. Like it was a happy either way because the Sixers or the Nets had to lose, but I was just hoping for the most destructive result, which was the Nets losing to a Sixers team without all of their good players. And Jock Vaughn called the timeout 1 minute into the fourth quarter, another one, and didn't help whatsoever. It's like this idea that the timeouts, yeah, nice call, Z Gamer, it was the Bulls game. They don't actually do anything. It's just like we think that it does something. I'm sure there's a clinical scientific report out there that we can kind of dig into, but I actually don't know how much of a difference it makes.
Yeah, I guess it depends on which field of science is conducting the report. Because if it's fan psychology, then I would argue that timeouts absolutely make a difference. You almost have to pause the games to simulate your own rest and timeout. But obviously that means nothing to the Celtics at all. So let's move on. Also, you mentioned the Schadenfreude report. To any of our new listeners on the Celtics blog feed, we have a semi-recurring segment called the Schadenfreude report. The name basically says it all in that we celebrate the pitfalls of our so-called rivals in the league. And it's been a pretty juicy segment so far.
Yeah, really.
There's been a lot to give, a lot of content looking at the Lakers and the Nets and now the Sixers. We try not to, we don't celebrate injuries. I need to state that clearly, but we do celebrate the subsequent losses, I suppose is a fair way to put it. Should we move on to the Kings game? The Kings are currently, I've got some stats here for you, some juicy stats, Jake. They're ranked second in offensive rating, 116.8. The Celtics are first, 118.8. I believed we sort of tipped the scales there thanks to that win over the Mavs yesterday. The Kings, however, have the 25th ranked defense, and the Celtics have crept up to 17th and then 9th in the league in fourth quarter defense. The Kings are 5th in assist-to-turnover ratio and 4th in pace. No, sorry, I believe that's the Celtics. Excuse me, that are 5th in assist-to-turnover ratio and 4th in pace, and we're 5th in true shooting as well. So defensively, I think is the major outlier there, the major discrepancy, in that the Kings just don't have any sort of defensive prowess at all. You could argue they never have, at least since 2004 or 2002, whenever it was. Jake, how do you see this matchup going?
This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
This is going to be fun. This is another big one.
300-point game.
Yeah, oh my God. I know. I think this is probably, if you're a gambler, one where you bet the under. Like it's gonna I just have a feeling, it's like, oh, best offense gonna be super, and the line's probably gonna be super high. I haven't had a look at it yet. This is gonna be interesting because the Celtics clearly, got up for the Mavs game. They circled it on their calendar. Are they going to be hearing the other best offense in the league come into town? We have the best offense. They still keep talking about how they're a defensive team. We yet to see that come to fruition consistently, at least. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. I know, Sabonis has kind of given us some trouble in the past. Really good player. They're really good and really fun offensively. It's going to be interesting to see how we hang. I would like to see us crank it up a little bit here, just because I think that's going to be, as you said, be the difference in the game. Can we just get a few stops? Because the offense is going to be absolutely no problem. Like, there is just no resistance anywhere. There's no rim protection. There's no perimeter defense. Like, Davion Mitchell, he's their best defender. And that's great, but you have a 6'4", 5 guy as your best defender. Drew Holiday can't guard Jaylen and Jayson, so as good of a defender as Davion Mitchell is, it's going to be absolutely no problem for Jaylen and Jayson getting to the rim. So just get a couple of stops, and we should be able to come away with the win here.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident going into this one as well, and no surprise that motivation would be a major factor for a player as young as both players as the Jays, Tatum and Brown. But the fact that they're so close in offensive rating, these two teams, you wonder if the Celtics are going to use that as fuel for the fire to come out and just like lay the smack down on the Kings. So
yeah,
going to be good to see.
And one thing to give us a little extra confidence, the Kings are just on like their East Coast road trip. They had like a back-to-back against they lost to the Hawks in the back-to-back. That's right. And they played a tight one against the Grizzlies in the night before, which they won, where Ja had like 34. So they are on a road trip. So and they've had a couple of tight ones back-to-back. Now they come to Boston. So it is a good time for us to be catching the Kings and hopefully start the next 9-game winning streak.
Well, yeah, and this is game 2 of a 6-game homestand for the Celtics. Yep. So with the Kings and then Wizards, Hornets, and then the Heat twice. Which is going to be interesting, and all extremely winnable games, as well as this Kings game. So you talk about the second streak already having begun with this Mavs win. It looks like that could very well be the case. Moving on, and to wrap up here, Jake, you have devised a very spicy segment for us. Tell us more. Okay,
so the Celtics have been so good in part because of their depth. It's kind of been an embarrassment of riches. And so I thought it would be fun to try and kind of rank the level of luxury each of these players has down to how integral they are to the team. Like, so which one could we live the most without, and which one could we live the least without? I think we all agree that the most important players when healthy are Jaylen, Jayson, Marcus, Al, and Rob. When he comes back, our top 5, which leaves Derek, Malcolm, Grant, and House Money. We could throw Pritchard in there, but I didn't, just because like, when the team's healthy, he's not playing at all. But that honestly speaks to the depth of this team as well, because he's kind of the first one off the ranks. He's so much of a luxury that we don't even need to play him when we're healthy, which is kind of insane, the fact that that's a thing even without Rob. So I'm thinking we go from most luxurious, like, most expendable, like, we're in Bali, we've had a massage, do we need the extra cocktail? Like, we're going to have a great day regardless of whether or not we have this last little piece. I'll let you go first.
Friend group.
Yes, yeah.
Most expendable. This is tough because I genuinely love them all. Looking at the names now, I think I have to go. People are going to log off the stream as soon as I say this and close the podcast. I think I have to say Sam Hauser.
Yeah, I do think it's Sam Hauser. Unfortunately. Right? Yeah.
Which just hammers home the point of this whole segment, is it really is an embarrassment of riches. But if you look at, White, Brogdon, Grant Williams, it's just, Sam Hauser's the first to go. It just is what it is, even though he's incredible.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about playoffs and trying to win a championship, I'm not sure how much Hauser is going to be playing in a finals matchup against the Warriors, for example. But he's perfect for the regular season. I do think he's going to be able to hold up in several playoff matchups. But you're going against Giannis and some of the best players in the league for a whole series. I think Hauser's minutes probably get scaled back just a little bit, just because we're going to need to fall back more on guys that can play defense at a slightly higher level.
Yeah, and like during the later stretches of a playoff game or series, like you can sub Hauser like in and out, sort of like in an offense-defense rotation there. So not completely useless in the playoffs, and no more or less than Danilo Gallinari as well, except that Gallo has his own amazing theme song, so something that we need to work on for Hauser during the season. All right, I believe you've got the next pick there, Jake.
Man, don't remind me that we haven't been able to enjoy that Italian Stallion video. It's worked out okay.
Put it on any time you want, man. I'm happy to put it on any day.
It's true. I got to play it enough so it ends up on my Spotify Wrapped.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets interesting, I think, because now it's Brogdon, Derek, or Grant. I personally think that it's Brogdon,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Say more.
I mean, this is more about how I feel about Derek White, who I'm in love with, than anything else.
I thought you were going to protect Derek White at all costs. Looks like I'm right.
I think we kind of saw it a little bit. Brogdon went out for 4 or 5 games there. I think Derek White is just like the ultimate insurance policy. So I think that you want to make sure you have him, if possible. Like, you're on that trip to Bali, you got to make sure you got Derek White. But so Brogdon,
Essential crew member.
exactly right, and so Brogdon, like, again, it just speaks to how deep this team is. Where I personally would feel more comfortable if we lost Brogdon versus Derek, because I think that he would be able to run the point, like be the point guard for the team more so than Brogdon is. I think he's more of a score first, and his scoring gravity leads to him being able to make. So he's a good playmaker as well, but that's kind of how he gets his assists. And also, yeah, the injury prone thing. Good call by Justin Chapin here in the chat. Yeah, and defensively, Derek's better as well. So I think as amazing as Brogdon is, and as much as I need him to win Sixth Man of the Year to win some tasty cheddar, I think he's my next pick.
Well, you're going to hate this, but the next branch I'm chopping off the tree is Derek White.
Okay.
And that leaves him on the scrap heap for you to claim, which is great, I guess. I don't know how far we can go into this fictional draft world, but mostly looking at the big rotation or lack thereof, and factor in the shooting off the bench as well, obviously leaving Grant Williams on the squad in this case. I just think that what Grant Williams offers holistically, and I suppose I'm thinking like through the lens of a playoff season as well,
Yep.
He offers defense, switching, shooting. He's got that driving off closeouts as well, element to his game now as well. Just sort of end to end, you're looking at sort of skills that you can add throughout the course of a playoff game or a playoff series. It hurts to say because Derek White can offer so much in his own right, but I just think Grant is necessary given the makeup of our roster and the injury proneness of the Celtics.
Yeah, so interestingly, as much as I talked up Derek White, Grant was also my least luxurious and most integral piece. I think you need him, and you can almost just boil it down straight to Giannis. It's like, we need Grant for Giannis. You're going to be in the Eastern Conference. You're going to have people that can deal with Giannis. And Al Horford is plenty capable on any given possession, but to throw Al Horford to the Wolves for a full playoff series on Giannis would just be an unfair task for us to ask of him. So I think Grant is actually the right choice as well, because I think the defensive versatility, we need the size, the front court rotation. Yeah, I'm with you. I know, surprise, but yeah, I agree. As much as I've fallen deeply in love with Derek.
So we're calling it then, Grant Williams is the most valuable role player, the MVRP of the Celtics.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's
Hashtag growing in the game, baby.
Yeah. We'll have to get Gil back on to really sort of flesh through that point. That's interesting. Great little segment there, Jake.
Thank you.
It's great, but it's also a little bit torturous in that it's like being asked to choose between your favorite children or something like that. Let's never do that for the starters, please.
No.
I can't take it. Spoonie in the chat, shout out Wayne Spoonie, says, I'd take Grant over Brogdon or White, given we need people to stop Giannis. Absolutely. Yeah. Another good point. Jake, we're about to wrap up. Obviously, I almost want to hang for longer because it was just so satisfying to defeat Luka, not that we had anything to do with it, in such a fashion. Any other final takeaways or remarks from this game before we wrap up?
No, man, just feeling good. Love where this team is going. It's everything that Brad Stevens ever wanted from these guys. Not too high, not too low. Process over results, Kaizen, responding to bad performances, moving the ball, read and react. Beautiful.
Absolutely. let's leave it there. That is going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got the Green with Envy guys back with another pod on the Celtics blog feed on Monday. We'll be back midweek sometime. In the meantime, you can check out our YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone who's in the chat now and for saying hello during the podcast. The link for the channel is going to be in the description, as well as our link for our Twitter profile, Instagram, TikTok, etc. We're all over social media. It's been great. And of course, check out Celtics blog if somehow you're not already. Currently chock full of excellent post-game write-ups. Jake Eisenberg, love your work, mate. Thanks again.
Thanks, mate. Let's do it again.
All right, until next time, go Celtics.